Hello everybody, this is Harper, and it's the first video I've done on this channel for a while, and it's Dissidia, which means that 12 people are gonna really like it. I've been meaning to get back into fighting games. I've been meaning to get back into some more streams. I'm playing Monster Hunter Rise on PC now. I need to get back to writing the Skies of Arcadia fic. My last update was in October. I took a vacation in December, partially for Endwalker, and then also just because I needed it for my mental health sake. If you're able to, do take time off from work. I know not everybody has that luxury, but if you do, do it. And then also I got very sick, which took a lot of my focus. Today we're going to be doing a Lufenia Plus mission. To make sure I do this really well, one of the characters I'm going to use, because it is technically his event, is Snow Villiers from Final Fantasy XIII, and I realized that I didn't have the best armor for him. So I'm going to get this cool purple armor for him. And no, we're not going to use that to upgrade it. We're going to come over here, and we're going to use these to level it up, which I won't need to use as many of them because they're fancy. This is purple armor, and I have these books that will allow me to refine it, or realize it rather, and then I have these upgrade materials that allow me to turn it into this fancy blue armor, which means that it will have even more special effects. I think this has an encouragement keystone effect, which means that it allows his brave attack damage to exceed certain limits. Brave is something we can talk about. We've talked about it before when talking about Dissidia. When you attack, you generate brave, and then you spend brave in order to do damage. It's almost like you're stocking up your damage points before you actually spend them. Not always, but that tends to be how it goes. This is the team I'm using. It's kind of esoteric. It's Noel from FF13-2. It is Machina from Final Fantasy Type 0. And then it is Snow from Final Fantasy 13-2 for like 2 seconds. He's not in that game very much. And then Lightning Returns. I have him in his Lightning Returns outfit. These are characters that I don't have like a lot of affinity for. It's interesting, like there are characters like right there on that screen. I saw a character I like more. I like Garland, right? I like FF1's villain Garland. I could be out there with Y'shtola or like some other characters. Obviously each character has their own special skills, but you know, this is a very specific team, and we'll talk about it as we go. I'm selecting a summon to help out here. One of the things I need to do in this battle is ice damage. I thought bringing Shiva along would be very good, but instead we're going to use Odin, which lowers enemy defenses. Now we're looking for call abilities. These allow us to temporarily use other characters' special attacks. In this case, I'm grabbing Kurasame from Type 0, who will allow us to use a powerful debuff and also Ice Enchantment, which will help with the orb. What do I mean by the orb? Well, we'll talk about that once we get into battle. For those of you who've never seen a Lufenia mission or a Lufenia Plus mission. They are both very fun and also sometimes very frustrating. We'll talk about all of that. In this case, we are going here. Here's the team. Noel has an Ultima Weapon, which is a new thing that just got added. They are the strongest weapons in the game, which means his damage is going to be very good. He is also level 90. We're in a period of the game called C90, which strands Death Stranding, which it's almost 4 in the morning here, so if I stumble over my words, that's why. It stands for Crystal level 90, which means that characters are finally going to be able to not be level 80, but level 90 if you level them up properly. Right now, there's a very limited amount of them who can. And those are the characters who can use Ultima Weapons. I'm looking for a support character right now because I can summon them in to use for a portion of the fight. I think about taking Jack here because he's a powerful damage dealer. Instead, I take another Noel from a friend. We'll talk about each character's special abilities. Noel has an Ultima Weapon. Those green glowy ones are what we call Burst Plus weapons or BT Plus weapons. Burst are these things that allow you to use long strings of all your attacks plus a big finisher. Burst plus abilities allow you to just use the finisher, and sometimes sometimes you want that because using that finisher will grant certain buffs. We can talk about what some of those buffs are as we go. Right now, that's Kurasame. We're summoning him in. He puts a debuff on the enemy called Hyoro, which increases damage they take and should give us an ice enchantment. You're going to see a lot of things with these characters. Let's talk about them very quickly. So the reason I'm using Snow is twofold. Snow is ice elemental, and one of the things that we need to do in this fight is to do ice damage. And anytime we are taking, like, the boss hits us, also Ferris is coming in here from FF5 to do some debuffs on the enemy. But anytime the enemy attacks us and the attack is mitigated, we prevent the orb next to it, that big, obnoxious pink orb, from counting down. That also happens whenever we use certain types of ice damage. In Lufenia missions, if that orb reaches 0, you die instantly, no matter what you do. So you need to build a team that can fulfill the orb condition. Thankfully, this is Snow's event, and Snow is perfect for it. That tends to be the case. It tends to be that the character whose event it is tends to do well in that event, but you don't have to use them. In this case, though, Snow will be able to mitigate some of the damage, and he has this wonderful ability, thanks to another special weapon he has called a limited weapon. I'm stumbling over my words a bit, which allows him to preemptively attack when his turn starts, which means not only is he doing more damage, but he's doing ice damage ahead of time, which is very helpful. On top of this, with Snow, we don't need to worry about that orb at all. We don't need to worry too much about damage. So I have two very powerful damage dealers in Machina and Noel. This is Machina's BT plus ability, which is to say that it's just his final attack, which is called Illuminating the Future. This grants a buff. It grants a buff with a variety of things. It increases the HP damage that we do. It increases the amount of brave we can hold, which therefore also increases the amount of damage we can do in theory. It also means that it increases certain things that happen when Machina attacks as well. Kind of maintains his buffs a little bit more. We have 3 characters who are attacking not always when it is their turn to attack, which is to say I don't need to press the attack button for them to do extra attacks. Machina has this thing called Spiral's Linchpin, which means that if he has a certain buff, he'll just do an additional attack, like he does right there. Same thing with Noel. Right at the start of the battle, all I need to do is use one skill, and now for about the rest of the battle, Noel is going to follow up all of his attacks with extra damage. This is important because Lufenia missions have a turn count. I have until turn 55 to destroy this enemy, to defeat it. Otherwise, I lose automatically. I'm at turn 10 right now. There's some ways I'm going to be able to cheese this a bit. Ways that I sort of freeze time, although not really. And now, obviously, the bad guys summon a minion who could do a lot of damage. If I didn't have Snow to mitigate it, I'd be worried. Snow's not actually my favorite tank. There are other tanks in this game I think that are much cooler. Gladio from FF15 has ways of, like, sort of interceding and stepping in front of people to cover and take damage for them or to dodge it completely. Snow's thing is that he mostly manages the amount of brave damage an enemy does. Brave, by the way, if you look down where all the the main party members are, like, look where Snow is right now, that big orange bit that says 59 whatever max, or even Machina there for a minute. That's your brave. That is an indication of a sort of base amount of damage that you'll do. There's some calculating that multiplies it a bit. If you have a lot of brave and then attack, you'll do a lot of damage. If you don't have much brave and attack, you won't do that much damage. If you reduce someone's brave to 0, you will break them, and breaking somebody means that you knock their turn back by 1, and can also put them into a sort of dazed state, which is nice. That's one of the reasons too that having characters that attack extra, which is to say, you know, Snow attacking preemptively and then Noel and Machina attacking after their main attacks. Not only does it mean they're doing extra damage, which means more damage per turn, which makes it easier for me to destroy the enemy within the turn count, it means more chances to break them, to push back their turn, to prevent them from attacking, which is very good. Now I'm setting up Machina so that he'll do some counterattacks. He'll continue to use Spiral Linchpin to attack, but also, you know, this is an example of Snow's mitigation at play. Yeah, we get some debuffs here, but in other scenarios without a tank, we would have taken a lot of damage there. The debuffs are annoying, but not the end of the world, and we'll roll with it. Now Noel is going to use his BT plus skill, which, again, also just grants certain benefits. We'll show a full BT later on. Noel's does a couple things. It increases the recast speed of our EX abilities, which are kind of like limit breaks. It grants certain free ability uses. It increases the amount of Brave that we have. And when we're breaking or attacking a target that's been broken, which is to say, if we reduce an enemy's Brave to 0, or are attacking an enemy whose Brave has been reduced to 0, we will do additional damage. The nice thing about BT plus weapons is that by being able to use just specifically those finishing moves, it means we can use those buffs a little bit more liberally. It means that some fights are very approachable depending on the combinations of buffs that you're using. That said, this team is like pretty gnarly. Snow takes care of the orb, which used to be one of the scariest things in Lufenia, because if it got to 0, you were just fucked. There's the conditions for the orb. Deal Brave damage, that does ice, it pushes it up by 1. If we are mitigating, it pushes it up back by 1. And now that we know that we can basically deal with the orb, I need to do as much damage as possible very quickly. Having all those additional attacks, Spiral's Linchpin, Hunter of Light for Noel, is very, very useful. And in this case, now I'm going to take my my friend's Noel, reapply that BT buff so that Noel is also attacking very strongly, and we're reapplying the buff on everybody else as much as we can. And now we're going to just have two very strong characters. Granted, I think mine is stronger because they have the Ultima Weapon. But you can see Snow is just handling the orb on his own. Now, the thing about Lufenia missions that I like, so let's talk about what I like about them, what I don't. I like the puzzle-solving aspect. I like the team-building aspect of it. You can do the obvious thing, which I did in this case by using Snow, but I didn't have to use Snow. I could have used a variety of characters. I could have not even used a tank. I could have just tried a variety of high damage, you know, sort of tactics to see if I could brute force everything. Technically, I am sort of brute forcing here with just the raw amount of damage I'm putting out here, but you know, it's tricky. Like, I like the excuse me, I kind of hiccuped there because again, it's like 4 in the morning. I like the puzzle of solving Lufenia pluses. I started to find that they were getting not unfair, but I needed a break, because as an enemy's health gets lower in Lufenia plus, the amount of penalties that you suffer and mitigation that they can do is intense. I'm talking 200% defense up. I'm talking, you know, auras that reduce your brave gain by 100% or higher, right? So, like, even now, as the fight goes on, you'll see that that follow-up attack by Noel is not doing nearly as much as it was at the start of the fight. As the fight goes on, you start to do less damage. In certain cases, the enemy will start to enter certain phases where they, you know, they'll glow red, or they'll summon additional ads, and if they're glowing red and they act, they'll kill you instantly, or if you don't kill the ads in a certain amount of time, you'll still fucking die. So some of the Lufenia Plus conditions, some of them are notoriously hard. Some of the normal Lufenia missions were very hard at the time, but I find that Lufenia Plus missions were getting to the point of being so punitive that I was less interested in them. I was very glad to come back to this one and sort of take a team of characters that I don't have a lot of particular attachment with in terms of, you know, I like Noel, but he's not my favorite Final Fantasy character. Snow's okay, but I only really like him in Lightning Returns. Machina is interesting, but, you know, that's only if you're one of the dozens of people who has, you know, played Final Fantasy Type 0. So this isn't a character full of, you know, a team, excuse me, full of characters that I really adore, but one of the things that's fun about Dissidia is that you get to engage with characters across a broad spectrum of Final Fantasy history and learn more about them and understand their abilities and maybe start to like them a little bit more. It's really, really nice. Not that these are characters I didn't like, but seeing them in action in ways that are pretty hardcore, it's like, I'm like, oh, Noel's pretty tough. Oh, Snow can really hold his own. You know, Machina has a certain, you know, I have him in an alternate costume, but I'm like, he has a certain sort of gallantry about him, which, you know, obviously it's been years since I played Type 0. I got Type 0 initially so I could get the demo for Final Fantasy 15 episode Dusky, and then I played Type 0, which was a good decision because Type 0 and then also Crisis Core are directed by Hajime Tabata. I said that funny. But he was the one who directed Final Fantasy 15, who sort of pulled that game from the gutter, and I like the way that he directs his games. I think he experiments with things mechanically in ways that are not always successful, but which are at least always interesting and risk-taking in a corporate culture, in a games culture, in a franchise culture, which is sometimes risk-averse. This is a normal burst phase. We have used my Noel to go into a full burst, which is using all of his abilities and really going ham. I sort of misplay this here the same way that you can misplay a hand of Hearthstone or something, right? Where I think there were ways where I could make sure I had more free abilities. Instead, I'm going to burn out a little bit here. These burst phases can be incredibly damaging depending on what you do, especially if you have characters that are also doing additional attacks based off attacks that your character does. So, for instance, the Cloud of Darkness, which is the ultimate villain from Final Fantasy III, has a sort of state of being where if anybody attacks, she will do an extra attack. If you go into a burst with her doing that, you can get hundreds of thousands more additional damage. Just the fact that Snow and Machina were able to assist right there means that I'm going to do a little extra. This is actually, what's the final number going to be here? I want to see it. Let's take a close look. I'm hitting 2 enemies, so it's kind of high. So that's about 2 million something by the looks of it. Might be wrong there, I was looking very quick. I've had it hit 5. With the right characters, with the right compositions, like, it's kind of fun to try that sort of stuff too. We're at turn 41, so we're slowly reaching our limit, which means burst, the way that I used it right there, doesn't count as taking turns, and now that we've summoned Odin, the next 6 actions that we take also don't count as turns. They kind of exist within this limbo state. This is one of the ways that you can kind of game the system a little bit. We're going to do extra damage in here. We're going to generate our EX abilities faster, which is important even though I have two high damaging characters in Noel and Machina, and I have Snow, who is not a slouch in the damage department and also doing some additional sort of damage of his own accord there, right? Like, I didn't tell him to just do retribution, he just did it. Even with that in mind, with all of the, you know, I don't know if this specific boss is auras, but, you know, we're at 17%, which means it must be reducing my damage output by a lot, which means that, you know, if I didn't have Noel, if I didn't have Machina, if I didn't have these characters that were attacking extra, these characters who I could really push damage to the limit, this could have been a really tight one. You know, the conditions for every Lufenia change. Sometimes it's just like, man, you really gotta manage this orb and you have a lot of time to do it, but one mess up and the orb situation is you're fucked. Or, you know, if you don't kill an ad in a certain amount of time, you're fucked. Here, it's more a matter of they've made it so dealing with the orb is not necessarily difficult, but the thing that is difficult is making sure you have the damage per turn to dispose of the boss. I think we're gonna finish with at around turn 50 or 51, which means that even with a very strong team that's doing additional damage off turn, and with somebody wielding an Ultima weapon, two characters with you know, BT pluses, one that did a full burst, you know, I'm not the best Dissidia player, but that's a lot of advantages, and yet with certain missteps, maybe I would have missed my target. It's hard to say. One of the reasons I definitely needed a break from this game, I needed a break from everything. From writing, from everything, you know, besides just some personal time with friends and family and things like that. I really just needed a genuine break. It happens. Now I'm back at work. Now we're trying to figure out all sorts of stuff. Hopefully, what is this? The year of 2022, right? Hopefully it's a good one. It's hard to say. But I'm trying to get back into maybe a little bit more of putting content on YouTube, streaming a little bit more, spending time with friends, increasing my writing pace again. The fact that I haven't had a Skies of Arcadia update since October breaks my fucking heart. The scale of that project is terrifying, and I really want it to be complete before I'm like 36 or something. But we're in a good place here, right? Like I said, Lufenia is part execution. In fact, a lot of it is execution, right? One misstep means that an orb might, you know, click and kill you. You know, if you're not, you know, a misstep you make down the line, you know, 10 moves ago could fuck you over. In this case, the other part of it is like team composition and finding the right key to fit into the lock is crucial. The two locks were, I needed a character that could manage the orb. Thankfully, Snow is like perfect for that. And I needed a combination of characters that could meet the damage check. That's two different sets of criteria, which required me to build a trio of characters that met highly specific conditions. There's something reassuring, rewarding, and exciting about that. Especially because it meant using characters that I don't have a particularly strong affinity for, or emotional attachment to. So that's one of the benefits of this game, I think, and of the Lufenia missions. I do think that sometimes the missions are overtuned. I have assisted 30 people using my Ultima Weapon Noel, which is very nice. Sometimes you, depending on who you're using, you assist like, I don't know, 3 people. Here you can see I don't get that much from it. I get some summon tickets, which means free gacha draws. This is a gacha game, so, you know, be warned, but I find it very generous. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing it. You know, but the general prerequisites, the same way that if I was showing you Genshin Impact, I would be like, please be aware of what Genshin Impact is. But you can see the shards I got will allow me to build, make those ingots that will allow me to turn BT weapons into BT plus weapons, and just sort of allow me to build my characters out, which is very, very nice. What should I show off now? This will be like the next Lufenia Plus that I might do. I probably won't post it. They are doing divine boards right now, which is like if you hunt down a certain version of Ifrit enough, you can get tons of materials, tons of free currency, tons of summon tickets, and these always come with a Lufenia and a Lufenia Plus. I'll have to figure out the Ifrit Lufenia Plus next. Looks kind of hard, so you know, I did the Lufenia, but that doesn't mean my being able to do the Lufenia does not mean I can do the Lufenia Plus. I can run 5 miles. That doesn't mean I can run a marathon necessarily. These are the Ultima Weapons. You can upgrade them by doing certain missions with the characters who are at level 90. I accidentally made a dagger, which nobody can equip right now. I do have the ones that Noel can use, and I made a spear because there is one character who is level 90 right now, who I will show off, who can actually use that Ultima weapon. And also, the more you do missions, the more you're able to actually upgrade those Ultima weapons as well. But that character right now is Sid Highwind from Final Fantasy VII, who I still... there's Reno. Who I still need to level up in some ways, but right now, yeah, he has an Ultima weapon. Good for him. Good for you, Sid. Good old 34-year-old Sid or whatever. Did you know that Orin is like 35 in FF10 and they're like, he's an old man? That dude's like 40-something, 50-something. You can't put that one past me. But yeah, like all these fun characters that you get to play as. Like there's Kadaj from fucking Advent Children and he's super fun to play as. Like go figure. These are the spheres I was using for anybody who's into that sort of esoterica. Machina spheres are a little weird. B spheres are usually considered things that apply to tanks. So here I have to figure out just like something that might vaguely work for him right now. And I'm gonna end up doing probably target attack up RF, which is the refined ability. The normal version means that when you are being targeted, your attack is increased by 10%. This should be like 4 or 5%. But yeah, you just build out your characters, you figure it out. Lufenia Plus, highs and lows, but it is fun. And cool costumes too. But that's it. I will see you around. It is almost 4:20 right now, so in the morning. So I gotta go. See ya. Look at those costumes. So cool.